Okay, so today we are going to be reviewing pumps, or reviewing, comparing, contrasting, everlasting opinions on which pump pumps the most and which pump sucks the most, pumps the least. We will be testing 5 different pumps. These are the pumps that will be pumped today. As a control, we have a Topeak Joe Blow, and then we have a Silca something floor pump, another Silca pump, a Silca Impero Ultimate 2, and then a Zefal pump, and then a Rene Herse pump. So as a control, like I said, we have the Topeak pump, just because it's a floor pump. We'll be pumping up the same tire with 25 strokes and comparing it to the pressure that is put out by this pump. This pump retails for around $60, so I'm told. And we have this Silca floor pump, obviously not manufactured anymore, it's pretty old. This one you can find for about 80 bucks on eBay. Got this Silca Impero Ultimate 2. This retails for around $80 to $100, depending on where you get it. The weight is anywhere from, depending on the size you get, is 250 to 290 grams or so. The Zefal HPX3, 2 or 3. I think the number is the size. This is a large one. This weighs about 230 grams, so a bit lighter than the Silca, and retails for around 40 bucks. And lastly, we have the Rene Herse Nuda pump that weighs 30 grams and retails for $40. This is the one that I took with me on PvP. To test each pump, I will be doing 25 strokes of the pump on this wheel, deflating it in between, obviously, and seeing how many PSI each one produces. So another thing that I didn't mention is that after pumping each tire 20 times, I will take whatever pump off and then be measuring how many PSI is with this pump. So I just pumped this one 20 times, took the valve off, and just so I'm getting a more accurate measurement for each thing, I'm gonna be taking it off, putting this back on, because obviously when you remove the pump and put another thing on there, you're losing some PSI, a nominal amount, maybe 5 or 6, depending on the pump. So just pump this up. Let's see how many PSI is in there. After 20 pumps on the Topeak Joe Blow, we have around 40 PSI, which personally for me is about how much I like to ride on this bike. All right, now we got the Silca pump, Silca floor pump. This is probably my least favorite pump because of that. It falls over super easily, and also there's no way to lock this thing on. You're just relying on the washers inside of there, which are pretty blown out. Okay, so after 20 pumps of the Silca pump, taking that pump off and then putting this one back on, we have about, I guess that would be like 25 PSI. So 15 PSI less. Now for the Silca pump, Silca hand pump, frame pump. Okay, so the Silca frame pump produced about 15
PSI.
Now we have the Zefal pump. This is probably, or out of these two, I dislike this one more. I feel like it doesn't seal very well, but we'll see. So I forgot to mention that the Zefal pump has two modes. It has HP, which I assume stands for high pressure, and then X, which is for more voluminous tires, I believe. So we will be testing both. So first I did 20 pumps of X. All right, so with 20 pumps of X, it's not even enough to for the Topeak pump to measure. I'll give it a pump there just so you can see it's like primed. All the air is there and we have nothing. And the same thing is true when the pump is in HP mode. Nothing significant. And lastly, we have the Rene Herse pump. This is probably my least favorite pump. It gave me a lot of trouble during PvP, just because I kept getting so many flats and I had this tiny pump to pump up my tires. And I'm not even gonna bother putting the other pump on here, because after 20 pumps, this is still ridiculously flat. So I'm gonna go with, yeah. Okay, so for our totals, the Topeak does got 40 PSI at 2 PSI per stroke. The Silca 4 pump got 25 PSI at about 1.25 PSI per pump. The Silca frame pump did 15 PSI or 0.75 PSI per stroke. Zefal and Rene Herse get a score of 0. This one, the Silca, obviously the best. While it is a bit heavy, it works the best. It seals up nice, even though it doesn't have the little, but you can buy, apparently you can buy replacement washers for this. I might actually, the next paycheck I get, I might actually buy like some spare washers for this, just in case they become unavailable at a later date, just because the march of society, the march of society, the forward march of society and consumerism makes it so that things become unavailable as time progresses and become harder to find, and things in general are becoming more disposable, and the landfills are filling up, and eventually we will all suffocate under the weight of our own misdeeds and trash. So yeah, my favorite pump. So the one bad thing about it though is that this thing right here, this goes, you know, like on your head tube. That's like the little hole for the pump peg. When you get this, this isn't glued in or anything, so it comes out pretty easily. And so the first time I pumped up a tire, or my tire with it, which was actually the first time I used it, this thing came flying out, and since it is round, it rolled down the hill, and then I had to go and retrieve it. So my solution for this was to just put a bit of tape around it, and it stays in there pretty good. Yeah, so I would say that's like my only qualm with it, other than the weight. It is a bit heavy. And then for this one is like, I've had this for a while. This one is kind of like, you put this on your bike that you're gonna like leave locked up outside of somewhere, just because it's they're super cheap, pretty disposable, forward march of society, and consumerism, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, it's lighter, it's 230 grams, and it has 2 settings, but it just ain't that good. Yeah. I've had some issues with this. It just takes a while to really pump up. And because I don't know, maybe it's the size or like the spring isn't very stiff. What can end up happening is when you're descending a hill, like you like sort of grip the top tube with your knees, and then if you don't have a little strap connecting this with the top tube, this can pop out and then fall on the ground, and then it gets run over by a car or something else. I've had that happen multiple times with these. Yeah. These actually are getting increasingly hard to find, just because I think people are using frame pumps less. Lastly, we have this. So it's an okay piece of kit. The thing is, this is like for absolute emergencies. I would use this if you have it's like so ridiculous, like it almost has no place. It's just, the only good thing about this pump is that it's super light. It weighs less than an ounce. The seal is actually really good, and you can buy replacement seals for it. Yeah, but I mean, it's a tiny pump, and it pumps up very slowly. So I took this to PBP with the thinking that, oh, you know, it's fucking France. There we go. You know, they have good roads out in France. Not a lot of glass, but I ended up getting 7 flaps and then pumping. I would say about 2 of those were due to like actual punctures, and then the rest of them were just because this pump pumps up so slowly and with like such a low rate of air that it's just like kind of, it's just shitty. So basically what ended up happening is that, you know, I'm there fucking for 5 minutes pumping up my tire with this tiny thing, and the tire doesn't seat properly because air is moving into it so slowly. If that, I'm not really sure of like a better way to say that, but like this thing pumps up so slowly, your tire won't seat, which can cause you to flat again, which is what happened to me. So when would you use this pump? You would pretty much only use this pump, in my opinion, if you have set up the tubeless tire setup with, and you're carrying like a fucking super light TPU inner tube in case your tubeless tire fails, and then you can pump it up to like fucking 30 psi or 20 psi with this, and then fucking like once you get home, you fucking set up your shit tubeless again. This is like for emergencies only, I would say. This is actually the pump that I carry for when I'm at work, just because it's super small and it doesn't take a lot of room up in my bag. And you know, there's fucking bike shops everywhere, so I fix my flat, roll over to a bike shop, and then pump my tire up the rest of the way. For emergencies only. This one for your beater bike. This one for your like everyday bike that you ride a lot. This one for your, I mean, this one doesn't really have any practical application. I mean, I guess, yeah. This one is mine. This is mine. This one, the Topeak one, is actually my roommate's. So before he became my roommate, I was just using the Silca one. So that's what the Silca one is for, is when you don't have a roommate that has a better pump. All these pumps have their own, you know, maximum amount of air pressure that they're able to handle. I find those numbers kind of pointless. I know I will never pump up my tire that much. On my rando bike, I usually do around 30 to 40 psi, and on my road bikes, I do 50 psi. The only time you're gonna want to pump up your tires more than about that much is if you're gonna be riding on a velodrome, which most of the time they have. Oh, my fucking fly is down. They're gonna have a pump there at a velodrome. Those numbers are kind of pointless. Just ride your bike, have fun. Try not to get flats. Carry patches. I carry patches. Most of the time, a patch will be sufficient. If you're doing like a race or something, or like a brevet, I would carry a tube. But for like everyday training rides, or like at work or something, just carry patches. I will note that there have been several times where patches haven't been sufficient. One time in particular, I can remember I was going down Tuna Canyon Tuna's, I think it's Tuna Canyon, down in Topanga. Tom Pidcock got a lot of guff for going down, and so what ended up happening is that I got a flat, and the hole in the tube was by the valve, which makes it really, really hard to patch. In this case, impossible. I used all of my patches attempting to patch this puncture that could not be patched. And then I ended up having to walk about 4 miles down the rest of the road and then over to the 7-Eleven that's like on the corner of PCH and whatever the fucking highway is that goes up. Sometimes it's good to carry a tube. What I think I'm actually going to do for the future is get one of those TPU, super small TPU tubes to carry in my seat pack, just because it's small enough that like I will still be able to effectively roll the seat pack and encapsulate everything inside of it. For the most part, still patch all my tubes, but if I have something that I can't patch, or I need to get back on the road in a more timely fashion, then I'll break out the TPU. So ratings is going to be out of 10. This one I'm going to give a 7. It gets 3 points off for 1 not being mine. B, 2, just looking kind of ugly. And another point off for not being a air compressor. Air compressors are goated, but I don't have the infrastructure for that. Number 2, I would give this a 6. It falls over, so 1 point off. It's not an air compressor, 2 points off. It doesn't work very well, so 3 points off. It's not air. Did I already say that? I don't know. 6. This one I give a 7. It doesn't have a gauge. It is a little bit heavy, and it's sort of expensive, but it's become a lot cheaper. Originally these were like $100 something, $180 or something. I don't know what the fuck they were smoking, but it's become cheaper. So far it's proved fairly reliable, blows a lot. I would give those 7 out of 10. The only way it could be a 10 out of 10 is if this thing were glued in. It had a locking thing just so you could be super secure, and it was lighter. This thing I give a 5. It's lighter weight, but a lot of air leaks out of it. It doesn't go very high. It doesn't give you a lot of PSI, and it's just not very ocularly elegant. It's mid. This thing I would actually give this a 5 as well. I would actually give this a 5.5. I would rather carry this than carry this, with the only reason being that this one is like 200 grams lighter than this one. I would say they both blow about the same amount. This one is just super light, and it's there when you need it, and you wouldn't even notice if you didn't have it. I would actually say that could be a negative. Like, you could think you had this pump, but you don't, because it's so light. You wouldn't notice it if it was gone. But like I said, for emergencies only, don't take this on PvP. For PvP, use this or this. Take this on PvP. You will be Big Daddy if you take this on PvP. Whatever you do in your life, do not use CO2 cartridges. It's just adding so much waste to society and to yeah, it's just like fucking the pump equivalent of plastic water bottles. You know, you're gonna use it once and you're gonna throw it away, and then it's like gonna just rot somewhere. Yeah. And also, like, it's one and done. Like, you can't reuse it. Like, how many of those are you gonna take on your ride? Versus, like, how many flats are you gonna get? Are you, like, if you're like, you only take one, and you get 2 flats, what the fuck are you gonna do? Fucking blow it up with your mouth? No. The only time they're practical, I would say, is if you're like in a race and you have tubeless tires and you need to reset that bead. None of the pumps that I have today can, this one can reset a bead and make your tire round, but none of the other ones will be able to do that. The CO2 is the closest you can get to an air compressor, but like I said, it's just not environmentally responsible to use those. Like and subscribe.